Hi everybody, thanks for joining us this morning. My name is Catherine. I'm the Communications Director for Freedom Institute. Welcome to our webinar on the basics of gambling addiction. This is part of our Process Addictions initiative that we've been running for the full month of September. So delighted to have Heiko Ganzer join us. Thanks for being here, Heiko.
Thank you.
Heiko is a licensed clinical social worker with over 20 years of experience in this field. He's the founder and director of 3 treatment programs for problem gambling. He's previously served as the president of the New York Council on Problem Gambling, and has also served as a media expert in various outlets, TV, radio, and TV and radio across the country. So again, we're just delighted to have him here. And without further ado, Heiko, I'm going to turn it over to you. And we ask the audience, type in your questions to me on the right-hand side where you see your panel, and we will have some time at the end to get those into Heiko as well. So Heiko, take us away.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that nice introduction, and hello everybody. That's a nice good morning. I started getting into the gambling treatment field actually by accident. It was asked of me because actually I became a clinical social worker and certified alcohol substance abuse counselor and gambling counselor after a career in the business field. And because of my knowledge, financial knowledge and business knowledge, people kind of felt that it was a good idea for me to take a look at this issue that was coming up in New York State. And so I was asked to go upstate to Albany and listen to a presentation, and then subsequently asked to write a proposal against, I guess, 12 other agencies at the time that were funded or were looking for funding, which I did, and we actually were awarded the, I hate to use the word win when I'm doing a gambling thing, we were awarded the funding and the program, and we started with 1 person, and subsequent to that, within a few months, had over 50 or 60 people in our program.
Wow.
And we connected with Gamblers Anonymous. We reached out to Gam-Anon, very important pieces, obviously. We were accepted by them, and we worked together to develop our program. And the program that we started was on Long Island, and we had 2 large agencies that were a part of our proposal and part of our focus, and that was South Oaks Hospital and Pedersen Craig Treatment Center, both of them mental health facilities, but of course South Oaks had a long history of treating gambling, so we were very happy that they allowed us to include them in our program. Well, subsequent to that effort, we went to several other programs and started them up, and finally I started Money Addictions of America. And Money of Addictions of America is a composite of money addictions, which would include gambling, shopping addiction, shoplifting, and others, and we have seen a whole bunch of different types of money addictions that have come in over the period of time that we've worked, so they're all similar, and we work with them. So just to give you an idea, this is our program. We're in Rocky Point, New York. That's our telephone number. Thank you. We do court evaluations, individual and group counseling, family therapy, couples therapy, crisis intervention, integrated substance abuse treatment, and outreach and education programs. I want to say that it is very important that we do the court evaluations because that's a particularly interesting area that we work in. The goals of this presentation that we have are just simply to help get you up to date on the knowledge and what kind of interventions might be had for seeing your own clients if you have clients and checking it out to see whether or not they have a gambling problem, not just looking for alcohol or substance abuse or some other addictions that are presenting, but we found that in the alcohol and substance abuse field, actually about 30%, and that is a statistic that was taken throughout the state, 30% of alcohol and substance abusers have gambling problems. So, watching about switching addictions with your clients is very important.
Heiko?
And we, of course, want to identify and be able to go to a program and refer them to other services in New York State.
Heiko, before you go on, I want to quickly elaborate on that. The 30% of substance abusers having gambling problems, are you talking about gambling in the form of just money addiction, whether it's like you mentioned before, the shopping or the shoplifting as well, or are we speaking specifically about gambling, risk-taking with money?
Yeah, that's a good question. No, I'm specifically referring to problem gambling.
Okay.
So in that category, we have, and frankly, I was working in a alcohol and substance abuse facility, and we found, we took a survey of each of the people that came in just in that agency, and we had over 200 surveys that were taken. Intakes, and we found that that number held up exactly as the statistics had shown. So, and that is problem gambling. And also, just to learn some basic treatment issues today. So, we want to start out with just some basic questions, and this will just check you out to see, how well or not you understand this issue of gambling. So the first question that we have is, all gamblers, compulsive or not, gamble for the same reason? And the answer to that would be false. And you can see by the answer that there's different types of gamblers, which we'll be getting into, but they don't gamble for the same reason. Recreational gamblers almost never turn into compulsive gamblers. And again, that's a false. We know from the alcohol and substance abuse field that there's a development over a period of time. The same is true of alcoholism and drug addiction. And there's a process that occurs during that development. It's the same with gamblers. So recreational gamblers can certainly turn into compulsive gamblers. And again, depending on their background, their history, family history, and things that have gone on in their lives. Male and female gamblers gamble for the same reason. And that's false. Two types of people become addicted. And so, they have basically an escape gambler and an action gambler. And we'll talk more about these things as time goes on, but the two typical types of gamblers that are out there are power gamblers, action gamblers, and then escape gamblers. It might be good to note, too, that women usually fall in the category of escape gamblers, and men usually fall into the power gambling issue. Compulsive gambling has many causes, but none are related to depression. Of course, that's false. And of course, these questions are kind of basics because we're doing a basic training today. Attempt to cope basically with the pain of depression and also an escape from thinking of a patient I had a long time ago that was a female Oriental Asian gambler. She came in and she had stolen some money from the store she worked at, a substantial amount of money, and was fired and had restitution for her theft. And came from California here to New York to open up a business and be successful. And of course, their father had told them not to bring in their child, their 2-year-old child. They were first to earn the money here, and then the child would come once they had earned the money.
Excuse me, Heiko?
Of course, yes.
I'm sorry, you cut out for about 3 or 4 seconds there. Could you just quickly begin the story again? You were working with an Asian woman, and that's about what we heard.
Okay, I was working with an Asian woman, and she had stolen some money and used it for gambling. And they came here to New York with her and her husband to make enough money to buy a home. Their father had held the son, their son, 2-year-old son, back in California. And as we went and took a look at the intake and the history, it was easy to determine that the reason she gambled was because she was so depressed and was trying to escape that depression because of her son, her 2-year-old son, not being with them. So, did you get all that, I guess? Good.
Yes, we sure.
If a person is, thank you. If a person is morally strong, that individual will not become a compulsive gambler. And of course, nothing false, nothing to do with moral weakness. You know, it's not a moral issue. Compulsive gambling has decreased in 10 years and is likely to decrease more. And this is totally false. We have had prevalence studies in New York State that reflect tremendous increases in gambling. And now, you know, as we see more gambling coming into New York State,
Heiko? Excuse me, Heiko, I don't know if you...
New York State as of
Heiko, I'm sorry to interrupt. I don't know if you can hear me. You're going in and out. Could you possibly maybe close all of the other windows on your computer? That might help with the connection. Sorry, everybody. We're having a couple of technical difficulties, obviously. We're going to try and get this sorted out. Heiko, are you there?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. We'll go through this again and get to the spot we were at. Can you hear me okay?
Right now I can. Actually, you know what might be helpful is if on the right-hand side of audio, if you will click telephone, maybe you could call in. Maybe that connection will be stronger.
Okay, what's your phone number?
Actually, the fuzziness just ended. Maybe you could continue, and we'll see how well the...
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I'm not sure what's going on, but if a person is morally strong, that individual will not become a compulsive gambler, and as I indicated, it's not a moral weakness. Compulsive gambling has decreased in 10 years, and that's an area where we have this prevalence, where it's growing very steadily. Actually, 14% based on the study in 1998. I know it's an old study, but 14% of 193,000 are at risk of developing problems due to gambling. 2.4% of teens are problem gamblers. Problem gamblers means that it's one of the more serious classifications. Pathological gambling and problem gambling are the two classifications. Actually, with adolescents, 90% of adolescent problem gamblers are male, 75% are Caucasian, and nearly 75% between the ages of 13 and 15 years old. When I talk about adolescents, and overall in New York State, the prevalence is about 7%, which is the second highest based on the study in the country, second only behind Las Vegas. So, you know, prevalence is one of the things that we've been looking at to try to get extra funding and make the public and our state people aware, the politicians aware of the problem. And of course, as you know, we're going to get more. It's going to grow faster because of the changes in New York State now to make the racetracks casinos and also to add casinos in New York State. Men and women choose different types of gambling. That's true. You see men at the playing poker, blackjack, roulette wheel, craps. Usually it's men. Women prefer slots, bingo, and lottery. If an addictive gambler is hooked, there's a very little chance that they will ever kick the habit, and that's not true either. We've seen a lot of success in treating gamblers, and there's three basic things that I always talk about when we treat gamblers. One is to have a qualified therapist who has been trained in the gambling field. Two is to attend GA and have the wife or the spouse attend. I say the wife, it could be the male that's the spouse of the gambler, but for them to attend Gamblers Gamanon. And three is to have a family member involved in the process. And it's very important because we have to manage the money. It's very different than alcohol or a drug in the sense that, you know, you can do a drug test or a breathalyzer. Here, we measure the money. And so having a family member around and maybe in some cases having to make that family member be the one who manages the money and gives an allowance to the gambler is one of the things that we do at times, depending on what we see. Also, through play, either with video poker machines, sport betting, cards, or other forms of gambling, when we're talking about adolescents, they exhibit a number of behaviors escaping into another world. And this is not only true of adolescents. When you talk about gambling and you talk to the gambler, they can be very responsible in many ways when they're not gambling with money. But an interesting thing happens when they gamble, and that is that there is no responsibility, and they lose a sense of the value of money. And the person goes into, the gambler, I should say, goes into a fantasy world. This is where we talk about this disassociative process of going into this fantasy world, and then they can't stop. The operating words, can't stop. Once you start gambling, what makes you a pathological gambler is that you can't stop. And it's often with altered egos, and of course they usually play until the money's gone. I just use one more thing. I just kind of say, where would you, think for a second for those of you, where would you find a gambler? Where's the most likely place in a casino that you would find a pathological gambler? And for those of you who go to a casino, what I would suggest is going to the all of the machines and taking a look, but the machine that's taking most of the space for the pathological gamblers is the ATM. Gambling definition, and of course that's where they're getting more money to go back and play some more because they can't stop. And the numbers are astounding. I've had the top person I had lost $17 million gambling. She was the wife of a construction guy. I never knew anybody had 17 million before, let alone lost 17. But she was his bookkeeper, and she'd go down to Atlantic City regularly on a weekend, and she claimed she didn't know she had lost the 17 mil until she had lost about 10 mil, and the teller behind the window indicated, because she was looking for some more money, she was going to get a marker, and he said, "Oh, geez, you've already gotten $10 million," and that certainly surprised her. And then, of course, she went back trying to win back the money. Anyway,
how long did, or what was the course of time in losing?
About 4 years.
Wow. Okay.
Now, the gambling definition is, Webster's, is to stake or risk money on anything of value, on the outcome of something involving chance, any matter or thing involving risk. In my layman's term, I say, well, okay, gambling is taking a risk, hoping for a return of your invested money. The pathological gambling definition is different. Pathological gambling is a progressive disorder, an individual who has psychologically uncontrollable preoccupation with that urge to gamble, resulting in damage to vocational, family, and social interests, and it's characterized by a chronic and progressive inability to resist the impulse to gamble. And by the way, it falls in the DSM-IV, it falls under the category of an impulse control disorder. For those of you familiar with the DSM-IV, it's right next to trichomania and other impulse disorders. Now, for our state people, and for the attractions of gambling that's legalized, because we've got to remember there are many forms of gambling. But in terms of legalized gambling, we see that certainly it brings in new revenues. That's why the governor now is hoping to get extra money so he doesn't have to increase the taxes. And of course, people have fun gambling, and there are many people who are social gamblers who can just go in and say, okay, I'm going to bet $100 and spend that $100, lose that $100. Excuse me, I have a little cold. I'm getting over. Lose that $100 or win some money and then leave the table. It creates new jobs if you're establishing casinos, which right now is certainly something that's an advantage to politicians who can do that and to the public. It brings in other businesses, restaurants. As a matter of fact, if you take a look at Atlantic City, they just tore down all of the housing that was just outside of Atlantic City that was not so favorable housing, and they put a shopping mall in there, you know, one of these huge shopping malls, and you can just go up and down, spend your money there, or go in the casino and lose it there, and increased economic growth. Now, we talked before about the development or the process of this disease developing, just like alcohol and drug. Normally, it takes about 3 years. It can take a lot less depending on the type of gambling. However, there are 3 phases that a gambler would go through. And those 3 phases would be the winning phase. And the winning phase is where a person gets a big win. They're sitting there and they're playing the slots or playing, you know, something, one of the games. I keep going on the horse track and win big. And they have one big win. It's exciting, it's fun, and the winning phase may involve this big win, and also this develops a search for action. The excitement of gambling is what draws many gamblers deeper and deeper into gambling. And eventually, the gambler can get hooked. So this big win does what to the brain? Well, it says, okay, I can do this. I can win money doing this, and it's easy. So that's the winning phase.
Heiko,
the next phase, I don't know how to go back on this.
That's okay. Heiko, just quickly, when you say that this takes 3 years, do you mean that winning phase is 3 years, or the whole thing and graduating into pathological gambling is about a 3-year process?
The whole 3 phases.
Oh, got it. Okay.
The winning phase, the losing phase, and the desperation phase, which I'm getting into. It would take about, on the average, 3 years to develop this. And the losing phase, or otherwise known as the chase, chasing your money, as the gamblers say, is the phase where the gambler now started to lose regularly, and the losses may be very heavy. And this phase may involve a weakened self-esteem and, again, distorted thinking. And as the losses pile up, the gambler's self-image as a winner starts to come apart. He or she gambles now to win back those losses. That's why we call it the chase. And what happens here, too, usually is a person starts to borrow money, and they start to lie and hide the losses. If you listen to gamblers, they always tell you about the wins, but they never tell you about the losses. And, of course, it not only affects his or her finances, but it affects the relationships, because now the person is gone from home. The gambler may start to avoid people who have lent him or her money. And so this is the second phase. The third phase, the desperation phase, and excuse me, but we took a person picture from 9/11 there. The gambling has now become the most important thing in the gambler's life, and more important than his family or his friends or his career. And so this phase may involve heavier borrowing and stealing. Stealing might start up now. The person is going to do almost anything to get the money for gambling. And I mean, I've had patients, mothers who've had their sons as gamblers, who've had to put padlocks on their bedroom door so that they could keep their pocketbook away from the gambler. And, you know, it's just an idea of some of the things that occur. Thoughts of suicide also start to come up at this stage in the desperation, and that's because the person becomes hopeless and deeply depressed, and suicide may seem as the only way out. So we go right into some things that show, you know, that can show that a gambler is a problem gambler. And that is this constant thinking about gambling, increases his bets or her bets to sustain the thrill, exhibits agitation when cutting back, gambles as an escape. We've talked a little bit about that. Chases the losses, lies to conceal activity, jeopardizes significant relationships. Just on that matter alone, you know, I had one of my gamblers that's coming here now. He was so happy to get his son to go on the Islanders in Nassau Coliseum on Long Island, where the Islanders play. His son was going to play on the floor before the game. And it was such a significant event for his son. And they all were looking forward to it, and he missed that event, going to that event, after he promised his son he would take him. Somebody else had to take him. And of course, he has a lot of remorse for that. Oh, by the way, remorse. Many gamblers don't have any remorse. Some do, but many don't. They rely on a financial bailout, and they're always looking for other people, like we had talked about, to give them money, and then can't pay them back. So they've developed their friends into enemies. They fail in an effort to control or stop gambling or other addictions. And there's a high level of energy that they have. Gamblers present with very high IQs. Actually, their IQs are over 120. You have to be sharp on your toes with a gambler. An extremely competitive personality. One of the things, when I used to go speak in the schools, in the colleges, I went to Manhattan College, actually, and did a presentation there. And the people that were the gamblers were all the sports people. And that's a whole other issue of where the NCAA and the major sports in America are very worried about with referees. And you've seen things where baseball players and other players have, famous people have become pathological gamblers. A history of gambling before the age of 14, and oh my God, we have just about everybody that comes in to see me has gambled before the age of 14. And that's why we think this crisis is developing in the future, is because kids are all, young people are all on the computers, and they're playing these games, and the games, they win something, and it's that begins to develop these characteristics. So we're very worried about what is going to happen in the future, since all of our youth is starting out with these computers and these games. I was on Dateline NBC News, and they asked me to go to the store, go to a toy store, and buy some games and bring to the show. And when I got on there, when I went to the store, I was amazed myself at the number of games that were casino-type games, roulette, blackjack, you name it, in a small handheld like telephone device. And on the box it said, okay, for kids 3 to 6.
Oh my gosh.
So nobody ever warned anybody about the dangers of gambling. Did somebody say something?
Oh, no, I was just reacting to that. I mean, already you have brought up this notion that adolescents are really at risk, and this is new information. In the research that I've been doing in the last few weeks, adolescents have not been a big part of the equation in terms of gambling, but your experience is saying that most, if not all, gamblers who end up with problems have started before the age of 14. It's really interesting. I didn't know that was such an issue.
Yes, Catherine, and about 5 years ago, I was called into a school system here on Long Island, one of the top school districts where the rich and the famous live, and their children go to school there, and they had this was a middle school, and they had a gambling problem at the middle school. So they called me in to teach the health classes, and also to teach the teachers to become aware of this problem and identify it with the kids. In addition to that, we also had to meet with the parents because they were so angry because one of the kids in the middle school actually owed $6,000, and they were threatening to hurt him if he didn't pay that $6,000. Oh. So it is a very prevalent thing among young people. I've been in many different schools talking about gambling, not just this one, where we see, the high schools mostly, where we see problem gambling at its highest. I was in one high school, and interestingly enough, the principal said, can you just go around, walk around, and just tell me what you see? And I walked into the auditorium, and there were 3 kids using a laptop and gambling online. And I went over to them and I said, well, how's it going? They said, it's pretty good, da-da-da-da, And they were online gambling, which is a whole nother avenue. And I said, how are you connected to the Wi-Fi, and they said, well, we're connected with the school's Wi-Fi. So I went back in and told the principal, and he almost fell off his chair.
Oh, no.
So the average gambling debt of a new patient coming in is about $45,000. Most gamblers have a medium to high income, and when we take a look at comparisons to chemical dependency, when in action, problem gamblers experience a high or euphoric state. They anticipate a high. The euphoric state is often of short duration, many hits, like crack, cocaine. If you take a quick draw, which we call the crack cocaine gambling in New York State, because we're talking about 3 years of developing a gambling problem. We've seen people with quick draw develop a gambling problem within almost instantly, a period of time that's almost instant. Euphoria is related to an endorphin release, and its elevated subjective excitement and physiological arousal, of course, occurs. Hooked on adrenaline and withdrawal symptoms associated with the sensation of gambling are related to the endorphin deficiency. So, we know that, the brain chemistry is connected to the reward system. And, of course, tolerance is in there, the same as alcohol and drug, and it's one of the criteria. And with CD, of course you need money to get drugs, but we're talking about you really need money to operate with gambling. There's no breathalyzer, urine test. We talked about the magical and fantasy thinking, about getting even or winning, the delusions that occur. When you get a gambler in here, we have to actually go through the process of taking a computer run out of ones and twos and showing him that it's random. There's no such thing as luck. There's no such thing as numbers that are going to occur on a frequent basis because they believe all that. Greater legal problems. They must pay off their debts and have restitution. And again, it's an impulse control disorder. So we're talking about a persistent and recurrent behavior, which has to have 5 or more criteria, and the gambling behavior is not better accounted by a manic episode. Pathological gambling in the DSM-4 is modeled after the substance abuse dependence criteria, and it first appeared in 1980. It's the preoccupation itself is, this thinking and planning and always having it in your mind of what you did in the past and what you're going to do in the future. The tolerance itself, everybody here who's had any experience with tolerance understands that. And the loss of control. Tries to stop, tries to cut back, can't. Withdrawal, becomes irritable and restless. Escape is a way of escaping from the problems of, relieving this horrible mood. And after losing money gambling, goes back the next day to get even. Lying, lies to family members and to others, the therapist. We really have to be on our toes. We know that. And has committed illegal acts such as forgery, fraud, theft, or embezzlement. As a matter of fact, the study I took of the 30% of the gamblers, they were all actually out of Rikers Island and were alcohol and drug abusers in the agency that I was working with at the time. Risk to a significant relationship has jeopardized or lost, a job because of it, or an educational career opportunity. And bailouts. Oh my God, please don't ever allow your clients or the gambler to get a bailout. Bailouts are unacceptable because then the person goes right back to gambling after he gets the bailout. What are the best 10 questions about gambling behaviors? If you want to ask somebody, in your treatment group, or if you're a private therapist, have you often gambled longer than you had planned? Have you often gambled until your last dollar was gone? Have thoughts of gambling have caused you to lose sleep? Have you used your income or savings to gamble while letting bills go unpaid? Have you made repeated unsuccessful attempts to stop gambling? Have you broken the law or considered breaking the law to finance your gambling? Have you borrowed money to finance your gambling? Depressed or suicidal because of it? Have you been remorseful? And have you gambled to get money to meet your financial obligations? And if they have a yes to these, then you have to, explore it further. Pathological gambling, this is from a study done in 1999, which shows the genetic implications, the age of onset, location, distance factors from casinos and from racetracks, internet access and regulation, the prevalence rates, there they are. Teens, we talked about, 1.5% nationally, 16 and 17, 2% at risk. Some of the types of gambling that you see, lotto, quick draw, horse racing, racetracks, OTB, sports betting. And, sports betting is just huge in New York State, and it's illegal. But there are many, many bookies, and we can't even get a statistic on that, but believe me, it's huge. Casinos, floating, and otherwise, games of skill for money, bingo, charitable gambling market, numbers, office pools or raffles, stock or commodities, day trading, internet, trading and chasing cards, limited editions, pull tabs on cards, all of these cards and things that they have. There's 6 types of gamblers. Professional gambler, gambler is not having a problem. Gambler is not, they save the money all year, then they go gamble and they have all their stuff down and they usually win money. They're not pathological gamblers. They don't have a problem. Antisocial personality, life career is getting money by illegal means, tries to fix gambling games, can't control their criminal personality. Casual social gambler, that's you and me, that go, we take small stakes, we take a small amount of money and gamble. Serious social gambler can stop, that's the operating word, he can or she can still stop but would miss it. Relief and escape gambler, that's the person, that's the female usually, can escalate to a compulsive gambler but may stay as a problem gambler. And the pathological gambler, problem and compulsive, and has 5 of the criteria in the DSM-4. And I don't know, are we supposed to go to questions at this point, or
well, Heiko, actually,
can we go on?
I was just looking at the, your slides, and back on the slides you had the questions, the Money Addictions of America's 10 Best Questions about gambling behavior.
Yes.
And I was curious about that and how somebody who treats chemical dependency might use those questions in an assessment. But then we got this great question from Maria, and she says, she's asking, if someone presents with both chemical dependence and gambling addiction, do you recommend treating both simultaneously, requiring abstinence from both?
That's a really good question, and of course we have had those people, and the people that I have worked with who have a dual diagnosis have usually been diagnosed for their chemical dependency, but not for their gambling. And usually there are many people out there who check for dependence, chemical dependency, but very few, and I'm glad you mentioned, Catherine, that 10-question point, because many people don't ask any questions out there about gambling. So to answer your question, if somebody comes in and they've been identified as having an alcohol and drug problem or a chemical dependency problem, they're already usually in the process of treating, and what happens is we do treat simultaneously. And a lot of the presenting problem of gambling is exactly the same as the presenting problem of alcohol or chemical dependency. What's not the same is the treatment. So what we do is we treat the person individually in my program, on the gambling, we have a program that is called the 21 Steps, and it's a program that was designed in Canada that I market over the internet. And it's a book that takes you through from the beginning to the end of the treatment for gamblers. And we also have them in groups for chemical dependency, and when the time is right, we also put them in groups for gambling. And then we have a combined group, which is nobody believed worked in the beginning, but it is working, of gamblers and people who have chemical dependency issues who have been in recovery. That's the key. And we have a combined group for them where we work on relapse triggers and things of that kind.
Heiko, thank you. Richard is following up with a question. He's saying, when you find or when you have a client who is getting sober from substance abuse, is it often that that client will eventually admit to gambling issues, or do you see it from the beginning?
No, it's not often. Gambling is a hidden disease. It's not like alcohol and drug where you can see the effects on the person readily, or you know, see the events that have occurred with the person. Gamblers are everyday folks. Pathological gamblers and problem gamblers are everyday folks who have jobs many times and who are, the IQ is 120 plus, they're very intelligent, and they look like everything's okay. And they hide and they lie, you know, so you can't tell. Even if they have a chemical dependency problem, they may not bring that out because they don't think they have a problem. Just like initially with chemical dependency, people are in denial. It's the same with, you know, with the gamblers. They're in denial, so unless you ask the questions, it's going to be hidden.
Great. And I have a question about that. Going back to the issues of adolescence, do you think it's an issue of neuroplasticity with adolescents, that their brains are literally getting rewired when they start engaging in this behavior?
I think, yeah, that has something to do with it, but I also believe that, you know, if we take a look at gamblers who are under the age of 14 and who began with something or other, I mean, it's a joke, but one of my Jewish clients said, Heiko, the reason what it all started with was the dreidel, and he had the whole group laughing about that. But for those of you who know what the dreidel is, it's a little game that is played in a Jewish home, and of course he was joking, but you know, you wonder whether it did contribute or not. But a history of, to answer your question directly, a history of some addiction in the family, whether it be chemical dependency or gambling or anything else that's an addiction, is one of the criteria, of course, that we look for with a gambler. So family history, and they have shown it just like alcohol and drug in the genes, so they carry it forward as well. It's not just in the brain.
Got it. Okay, another question here. Vera is asking, were the Rikers inmates from your assessment also from medium to high income? And I think that's harkening back to one of the criteria you said, like about the $45,000 in debt and like the people that you often see in your office.
Yeah, I may have misled you on that a little bit. The Rikers, I worked in that agency in Jamaica, Queens, and we housed these people in homes, and we treated them we would pick them up and they would go to day treatment. And of course, they did not present with a $45,000 debt, and they did not present as having middle income. They were low income, and they lost much less money. But their problem with gambling was as significant as any of the other gamblers that had these high numbers that I was talking about.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
She hasn't responded yet. I'll let you know.
Okay.
Yes, she says yes, thank you. So Heiko, another question. So heading into the DSM-5, we're coming off of an impulse controlled. Wait, what? We're moving out of the OCD, part of an OCD model into an impulse control disorder, right, in the DSM-5. Can you speak a little bit about that?
You're talking about obsessive compulsive disorder. You have to sort of rule out gambling. I think it says so in the DSM-4. I don't have one in front of me, but as I recall, if you have an obsessive compulsive person and they're gambling, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're a pathological gambler. I think it states in the DSM-4 that if the primary diagnosis is obsessive compulsive disorder, that you should rule out problem gambling and treat the obsessive compulsive disorder. Hopefully, I guess, in the minds of the creators of the DSM-4, while treating the obsessive compulsive disorder, the gambling problem will go away.
I see. Okay, let's see what we have next. So John R. wants to know what other resources there are for people who have gambling problems.
Okay, in New York State, we have a number of gambling treatment programs. I say we. I'm no longer on the council, on the New York Council. I'm sort of retired on the council, but if you look up on the internet, the New York Council for Problem Gambling, that's how I got started. I started when they started, basically, as a board member. They have all kinds of resources of people who are a part of the New York Council on Problem Gambling members that are treatment programs in New York State, and I believe they also list individuals who are treatment or they know of them. You could call up Jim Maney, who is the director up there at the New York Council on Problem Gambling in Albany. And there are, a good deal of resources. I don't know where they're located, but in addition to that, recently OASIS put together a inpatient problem gambling program upstate. And of course, there's criteria for admission, which I don't have handy right now. But that was just a tremendous find finally, because there never was an inpatient treatment program in New York State. So OASIS has it as part of a alcohol and substance abuse, and they separate the treatment for chemical dependency and gamblers. So somebody who needs that level of treatment, can really get some help. Now, don't be fooled. If you get a gambler that sees you and you hear the kind of money that they've lost, doesn't mean that shouldn't dictate that they have to go inpatient. I think, the best thing to do is to have them see a qualified treatment professional and first get a real evaluation as to how serious a problem they have before they, and maybe do some outpatient work before they go to that level.
Heiko, I also wanted to point out that there is a gambling disorders clinic at Columbia Hospital here in New York. It's at the New York State Psychiatric Institute, and it was also funded by the New York State Office of Alcohol and Substance Abuse, OASIS, and they offer free treatment for people who are seeking.
Yeah, right, and that's my good friend who runs that program. He was on the board for the New York Council for many years with me as well, and they do it at no charge, Catherine. So but they don't take many people because they don't have a big staff over there. They're funded it's not the greatest funding in the world, but he is, and his program is one of the best out there, and I certainly recommend that program highly to anybody in Manhattan who needs some treatment.
And his name being, is it Carlos Blanco?
That's it.
Okay. And just for anybody listening, this is easily findable, searchable on the web. I just Googled Columbia Gambling Program, and it'll be the first thing that comes up. Heiko, Rhoda is asking a question. She wants to know how you treat a family of a compulsive gambler.
Oh, Rhoda, thank you. I would be very bad to not include the family. I think of it as a family program, and what made me a success in my first treatment program that I put together was that I treated the family. And the significant others, initially they were resistant to treatment because they used to tell me, well, I said, okay, how about you coming into the program? And they'd say to me, well, Heiko, what problem do I have? Fix him, and everything will be fine. And we had to sort of, work through that resistance and denial. But when somebody lives with a compulsive gambler, they have a great level of codependency, and codependency issues, just like a significant other of a chemical dependency. And they enable, of course, the gambler. In many cases, they give them the money, and the gambler goes to them. Many times, they're the main enabler. So treating that person, that significant other, is just as important. That's why, if you remember at the beginning of the presentation, I said there were 3 things that were really important to do. 1, go to GA. 2, go to a qualified therapist. And 3, have a family member involved in the treatment. And so we always provided treatment for the family members, and the type of treatment we worked with would be we'd have them read Codependency No More by Melody Beattie. We'd have them read other types of, Terry Kellogg has a book out on inner child work. That's a good book. And of course we'd talk about the enabling processes and try to put a stop to that as well. And in many cases we had to be careful. If we wanted to make the significant other the manager of the money, sometimes they just didn't have the strength, emotional strength, to be the money manager, so we would have to go outside of the family to get a money manager, and sometimes like an attorney or something like that. And that would work as opposed to, or if there was some domestic violence, we wouldn't want to make the significant other the money manager because we'd be putting that person at risk. So those were the kind of things that we would watch out for.
Great. Well, Heiko, thank you so much. That kind of brings us to the end here. We only have a few seconds to wrap up. And so from myself and on behalf of everyone here at Freedom Institute, I want to thank first of all, our audience for tuning in and joining us in this process of finding out about gambling addiction and pathological gambling, and especially, as clinicians, how we can better address it with our clients, namely our CD clients. But Heiko, to you, thank you so much for taking the time and your effort, and especially because you're not feeling well. We just really appreciate your time and being with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine, and thank everybody for listening. Have a great day.
Great. And if anybody is on the line who's looking for continuing education credit, just shoot me an email after this is over, and we'll get that right out to you. Thanks, everyone.